Document. Part 1. It was just another quiet Tuesday morning on Maplewood Avenue. The sun was shining brightly, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tall oak trees that lined the street. People were going about their usual routines, walking, dogs watering plants or sipping coffee on front porches. Everything seemed normal, peaceful even, but that calm would soon shatter. Jerry Sullivan had been driving his garbage truck down the street for years. He knew the neighborhood well, the friendly faces, the occasional complaints about missed pickups, and the predictable rhythm of suburban life. On this particular morning, he pulled up to the curb near the Wilson house, a modest two-story home with flower beds neatly arranged along the driveway. Jerry stepped out of the truck, grabbed an empty bin, and started loading it onto the hydraulic lift. That's when he heard it. The sound came from behind him, a mix of footsteps pounding against pavement and muffled cries. Turning around, Jerry saw Ethan Wilson, a small boy no older than 9, running toward him as fast as his legs could carry him. Tears streaked down Ethan's face and his chest heaved with each desperate breath. Without hesitation, the boy threw himself at Jerry, clinging tightly to his leg. Whoa, buddy," Jerry said, crouching down to meet Ethan's eye level. "What's wrong? What happened?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he buried his face into Jerry's uniform, sobbing uncontrollably. His tiny hands gripped the fabric so tightly that his knuckles turned white. After a few moments, Ethan managed to choke out a single sentence through his tears. They're all gone." Jerry frowned, unsure of what the boy meant. "Who's gone, Ethan? Your mom and dad?" Ethan nodded furiously, then pointed back toward the house. "Mommy didn't wake up," he whispered, his voice trembling. "And Daddy isn't here either." Jerry felt a knot form in his stomach. Something wasn't right. He placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder and stood up, scanning the house for any signs of trouble. There were no broken windows. No smoke rising from the chimney, nothing obvious to suggest danger. Yet something about the scene made him uneasy. The front door stood slightly ajar, swaying gently in the breeze, and the curtains fluttered as if someone had left them open overnight. Trying to stay calm, Jerry reached for his phone. "Okay, Ethan, let's call someone who can help, all right?" He dialed 911 and explained the situation to the operator as quickly as possible. Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens pierced the morning air, growing louder as police cars sped down the street. Detective Laura Hayes arrived shortly after, stepping out of her car with an air of professionalism mixed with concern. She was in her mid-30s with sharp features and dark hair tied neatly into a ponytail. Though she carried herself with confidence, there was kindness in her eyes as she approached Jerry and Ethan. "What do we have here?" she asked, kneeling beside the boy. Her tone was soft, inviting trust. Jerry summarized what little he knew. "This is Ethan Wilson. He says his parents are missing. I found him crying outside while I was collecting trash." Laura nodded and turned her attention to Ethan. "Hey, Ethan," she said gently. "Can you tell me more about what happened?" Ethan hesitated, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his shirt. "I woke up this morning and Mommy wasn't in bed. I called for her, but she didn't answer. Then I looked everywhere, in the kitchen, in the living room, even in the backyard, but she wasn't there." "And your dad?" Laura prompted. "He hasn't been home since yesterday," Ethan replied, his voice cracking again. "He said he'd be back last night, but he never came." Laura exchanged a glance with Officer Ryan Cole, who had joined them by now. Something about Ethan's story tugged at her instincts. Missing persons cases weren't uncommon, but the way Ethan described it, his mother not waking up, his father vanishing without explanation, felt different somehow. Too sudden. Too strange. "Let's take a look inside," Laura suggested, standing up. She motioned for Ryan to follow her as she walked toward the house. Jerry stayed behind with Ethan, keeping the boy calm while they worked. As Laura entered the house, she noted how eerily quiet it was. The living room appeared untouched, with furniture arranged neatly, and a blanket draped over the armrest of the couch. A television remote lay on the coffee table next to an empty glass. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the silence weighed heavily on her shoulders. In the kitchen, Laura spotted a half-empty mug of coffee sitting on the counter. She touched it lightly. The liquid inside was cold. Beside the sink, dishes waited to be washed, stacked neatly in the drying rack. It was as though someone had paused mid-task and simply vanished. Her gaze drifted to the dining table where a newspaper lay open. One page displayed classified ads, several circled in red ink. Scrawled notes accompanied the markings, things like coordinates and frequency adjustments. Laura furrowed her brow. These weren't typical notes. Someone would jot down while browsing job listings. They hinted at something technical, scientific even. Upstairs, the master bedroom offered few clues. The bed was made, the closet doors closed. No signs of struggle, no evidence of forced entry. Yet, as Laura scanned the room, her eyes landed on something peculiar, a small black sphere resting on the nightstand. It was smooth and featureless, no larger than a baseball, but its presence felt out of place. Curiosity got the better of her. She picked up the sphere cautiously, expecting it to feel ordinary, but it didn't. The surface was warm to the touch, almost alive. As she held it, a voice, not spoken aloud but clear in her mind, echoed within her thoughts. "Do not interfere." Laura froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She dropped the sphere back onto the nightstand as if it had burned her. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't human-made. And whatever had happened in this house, it wasn't natural. By the time she returned, downstairs, reporters had begun gathering outside, drawn by the commotion. Neighbors peered out of their windows, whispering among themselves. Some speculated about a burglary gone wrong. Others wondered if the family had fallen victim to foul play. None of them suspected the truth, that something far stranger, far more dangerous might be lurking beneath the surface. For now, Laura kept her discovery to herself. She needed answers before jumping to conclusions. But one thing was certain: Maplewood Avenue would never be the same again. Document, Part 2. As Detective Laura Hayes stepped back outside, her mind raced with questions. The black sphere upstairs had unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Its warmth, its strange voice, none of it made sense. She glanced at Ethan, who was still sitting in the back seat of Jerry's garbage truck, clutching a stuffed bear tightly. His wide eyes darted between the house and the growing crowd of police officers and reporters. Something about his expression tugged at Laura's heart. He looked lost, scared, and far too young to be caught up in whatever was happening. Officer Ryan Cole joined her near the driveway. "What did you find inside?" he asked, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Laura hesitated. She wasn't ready to share what she'd seen or felt with anyone yet. Instead, she focused on the practical details. "The house looks fine on the surface," she said. "No signs of a struggle or break-in, but there's something off, like they just disappeared." Ryan frowned. "You think it's connected to the kid's dad? Maybe he ran into trouble somewhere." "I don't know," Laura admitted. "But I want to talk to the neighbors. Someone might have noticed something unusual." They decided to start with Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who lived next door. Her house was painted pale yellow, and flower boxes overflowed with red geraniums under every window. As they approached, Mrs. Thompson opened her front door before they even knocked. She was wearing a floral print dress and holding a steaming mug of tea. "Detective Hayes, isn't it?" she said, squinting slightly as she peered at them over her glasses. Come in, come in. Terrible business, isn't it?" Inside, Mrs. Thompson led them to her cozy living room, where framed photos of grandchildren covered nearly every surface. She gestured for them to sit on the couch while she settled into her favorite armchair. "So, what can I do to help?" she asked, sipping her tea. Laura leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "We're trying to figure out what happened to the Wilson family. Did you notice anything strange recently? Anything out of the ordinary?" Mrs. Thompson thought for a moment, tapping her fingers against the mug. "Well, now that you mention it, I did hear some odd noises late at night. Not loud, mind you, but enough to wake me up. It sounded like machinery humming, though quieter, softer. almost like it was coming from their basement. "Did you see anyone unusual around the house?" Ryan chimed in. "No, not really," Mrs. Thompson replied. "Though Daniel, that's Ethan's dad, he's been acting a bit secretive lately, always sneaking in and out at odd hours, and sometimes I'd catch him talking on the phone, pacing back and forth in the backyard. Looked worried, if you ask me." Laura exchanged a glance with Ryan. Secretive behavior, mysterious sounds from the basement. It all added up to something bigger than a simple missing persons case. After thanking Mrs. Thompson for her time, they headed back to the Wilson house. The basement door was located in the kitchen, tucked away behind a stack of cardboard boxes. Laura flipped the light switch, illuminating a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. The air grew cooler as they made their way down, the wooden steps creaking beneath their feet. At the bottom, they found themselves in a cluttered space, filled with old furniture, dusty shelves, and stacks of forgotten belongings. At first glance, it seemed like any other basement. But then Laura noticed something unusual, a large tarp covering what appeared to be a workbench. She pulled it aside carefully, revealing a jumble of wires, circuit boards, and electronic components spread across the table. A laptop sat open, nearby its screen displaying lines of code frozen mid-execution. Beside it lay another black sphere, identical to the one upstairs. "What is all this?" Ryan muttered, picking up a piece of equipment. "Looks like someone was building something." Before Laura could respond, a small voice startled them both. "That's Daddy's box." They turned to see Ethan standing at the bottom of the stairs, his stuffed bear clutched tightly in one hand. How he'd followed them unnoticed, neither of them knew, but he looked completely at ease among the chaos. "Ethan," Laura said gently, kneeling down to his level, "do you know what your daddy was working on?" Ethan nodded. "He said it would help us leave Earth." "Leave Earth?" Ryan echoed, exchanging a skeptical look with Laura. "Yes," Ethan continued earnestly. "Daddy said we could go to a better place. Somewhere safe. He worked on it every night after dinner. Sometimes he let me watch." Laura's stomach tightened. This wasn't just some hobby project. It sounded like Daniel Wilson had been dabbling in something far beyond his expertise, or humanity's understanding. She pointed to the glowing sphere on the table. "Is this one of the things your daddy built?" Ethan nodded again. "There are two of them, one upstairs and one here. Daddy took the first one with him when he left. He promised to come back, but he didn't." "And your mom?" Laura asked softly. "Did she know about these boxes?" "She didn't like them," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She told Daddy it was dangerous. They argued a lot because of it. Then, one night, Daddy went away, and Mommy started crying. She said we should forget about the boxes and move away, but we didn't." Laura felt a pang of sadness for the boy. Whatever had happened here, it had torn his family apart, and now it seemed it had taken them away entirely. She stood up, glancing at Ryan. "We need to secure this area. No one else comes down here until we figure out exactly what we're dealing with." As they guided Ethan back upstairs, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something extraordinary and potentially catastrophic. The spheres, the mysterious technology, the disappearances, it all pointed to forces far greater than they could comprehend. For now, though, their priority was keeping Ethan safe and piecing together the puzzle. Outside, the street remained cordoned off, with police tape stretching across driveways and curious onlookers gathering behind barriers. Reporters shouted questions at officers guarding the perimeter, their cameras flashing like strobe lights. Amid the chaos, Laura spotted Dr. Alan Pierce arriving in a silver sedan. Tall and thin, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he carried himself with the confidence of someone used to solving complex problems. "Detective Hayes?" he called out, approaching her with a briefcase in hand. "I'm Alan Pierce. You mentioned quantum anomalies?" Laura nodded, leading him toward the house. "We've got two unidentified objects emitting some kind of energy. I need your expertise to figure out what they are and whether they're dangerous." Alan raised an eyebrow. "Energy, you say? Interesting. Let's take a look." Together they returned to the basement, where Alan examined the second sphere closely. He used specialized instruments from his briefcase to measure radiation levels, magnetic fields, and other properties. As he worked, the sphere began to pulse faint fluorescent blue, casting an ethereal glow across the room. "This is unprecedented," Alan murmured, jotting notes onto a clipboard. "These readings suggest tachyon emissions, particles, theoretically, capable of faster-than-light travel. Whoever created these devices has access to knowledge centuries ahead of our current understanding. But why would someone build them?" Laura asked, her voice tinged with unease. "And where did they learn how to do it?" Alan shook his head. "That's the million-dollar question. What worries me is the potential instability. If activated improperly, these spheres could destabilize space-time itself, or worse, attract attention from whoever or whatever made them." As if on cue, the sphere pulsed brighter, emitting a low-frequency hum that vibrated through the walls. Cracks formed in the ceiling above, tiny bits of plaster raining down like snowflakes. Laura instinctively grabbed Ethan, pulling him close as the ground trembled beneath their feet. "We need to get out of here," Ryan shouted, already heading for the stairs. Alan quickly packed his equipment, but not before slipping the sphere into a protective case designed to contain hazardous materials. Together, they evacuated the basement just as the hum escalated into a deafening roar. Behind them, the workbench collapsed, dragging the rest of the clutter down with it. Once outside, Laura took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. Whatever those spheres were, they weren't toys. They weren't experiments gone wrong. They were tools of unimaginable power and danger. And now, the entire neighborhood was caught in their shadow. For Ethan, the weight of the situation was becoming unbearable. Clutching his bear tighter than ever, he whispered, "Daddy came back, but he took Mommy away." Laura knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll find them, Ethan. I promise." But deep down, she wondered if finding answers would be enough, or if uncovering the truth might put them all in even greater peril. Document. Part 3. The sun had begun to set over Maplewood Avenue, casting long shadows across the street. The once quiet neighborhood now felt tense and uneasy, with police cars stationed at every corner and reporters shouting questions from behind barricades. Inside the Wilson house, Detective Laura Hayes stood in the kitchen, staring at the glowing sphere Dr. Alan Pierce had brought upstairs. It sat inside its protective case, pulsing faintly with a soft blue light that seemed almost alive. Laura's mind was racing. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to come together, but they didn't make sense. Ethan's father, Daniel, had been working on some kind of advanced technology so far beyond human understanding that it defied explanation. And now, both Daniel and Claire, Ethan's mother, were gone, leaving behind only these mysterious spheres and a frightened little boy. Ethan sat at the dining table, his stuffed bear resting in his lap. He hadn't said much since their escape from the basement, but his wide eyes followed everyone in the room as if waiting for someone to tell him everything would be okay. Laura wished she could give him that reassurance, but the truth was, she didn't know what would happen next. Dr. Pierce adjusted his glasses as he examined the sphere again. "These tachyon emissions are unlike anything I've ever seen," he said, his voice low and serious. "They suggest faster-than-light travel, or perhaps even interdimensional movement." "Interdimensional?" Officer Ryan Cole repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You mean like another world?" "It's a possibility," Alan admitted, "but we're talking about science fiction here, things humans aren't supposed to understand yet. Whoever built these spheres has access to knowledge centuries ahead of us." Laura crossed her arms, feeling a chill run down her spine. "And you think Daniel Wilson built them? A regular guy from this neighborhood?" Alan hesitated before answering. "I doubt he built them entirely on his own. More likely, he reverse-engineered them from something else." "Something else?" Ryan asked, clearly skeptical. "Like, what? Aliens?" "I'm not ruling anything out," Alan replied, his tone cautious. "But let's focus on the facts. These spheres emit energy capable of altering space-time. If activated improperly, they could cause catastrophic damage, not just to this house but potentially to the entire area. Laura glanced at Ethan, who was listening intently despite his young age. She crouched beside him, speaking softly. "Ethan, do you remember when your dad took the first sphere? Did he say where he was going?" Ethan nodded slowly. "He said he was testing it, that it would take him somewhere far away. He promised to come back and bring Mommy and me too." "And did he come back?" Laura pressed gently. "Yes," Ethan whispered, "but only for a little while. He looked different, scared. He told Mommy they needed to leave right away, but she refused. They argued, and then Daddy left again, with the sphere. After that, Mommy wouldn't talk about it anymore." Laura exchanged a glance with Ryan. This wasn't just a missing persons case, it was a family torn apart by forces none of them understood. Whatever Daniel had discovered or unleashed, it had consumed him completely. As night fell, the decision was made to evacuate the immediate area. Authorities cordoned off several blocks surrounding the Wilson house, citing safety concerns. Neighbors reluctantly packed their belongings and left, some complaining about the inconvenience, others visibly shaken by the events unfolding around them. Inside the house, a team of scientists from a top-secret government division known as the Advanced Research Group, ARG, arrived to take over the investigation. They wore hazmat suits and carried equipment designed to analyze and contain unknown substances. Laura watched as they carefully transported the glowing sphere to a secure vehicle parked outside. One of the ARG agents, a tall man named Agent Lewis, approached Laura. His face was stern, his voice clipped and professional. "Detective Hayes, we'll handle things from here. Your involvement ends now." Laura bristled at the dismissal. "With all due respect, Agent Lewis, this is still my case. A child's parents are missing, and I intend to find out why." "Agent," Lewis sighed, glancing briefly at Ethan before lowering his voice. "This isn't just about a missing family anymore. These devices pose a threat to national security, and possibly global stability. We can't risk further exposure." "Before," Laura could argue, Ethan suddenly spoke up, his voice trembling. "Please don't take the box away, it's the only way to find Mommy and Daddy." Everyone turned to look at him. Laura knelt beside him again, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, we're doing everything we can to bring your parents back safely, but we need to be careful. These boxes are dangerous and we don't fully understand how they work yet." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, but he nodded silently. Laura felt a pang of guilt. She hated seeing him so scared and helpless, but she knew they couldn't ignore the risks involved. Hours passed, and the ARG team worked tirelessly to dismantle the makeshift lab in the basement. Boxes of electronic components, wires, and monitors were loaded onto trucks and driven away under heavy guard. Meanwhile, Laura stayed close to Ethan, ensuring he felt safe amidst the chaos. As midnight approached, the tension in the air grew palpable. The remaining officers patrolled the perimeter, keeping watch for any unusual activity. Suddenly, a loud, crackling sound echoed from the basement, followed by a brilliant flash of light that illuminated the entire house. "What was that?" Ryan shouted, rushing toward the stairs. Laura grabbed Ethan and pulled him into a protective embrace. "Stay here," she ordered Ryan, who hesitated but obeyed. Moments later, the ground began to shake violently. Windows shattered and furniture toppled over as the house groaned under the strain of some unseen force. Outside, the ARG agents scrambled to secure the area, shouting orders and trying to maintain order. Then, without warning, the shaking stopped. An eerie silence settled over the street, broken only by the distant hum of emergency sirens. Laura cautiously stepped outside, still holding Ethan's hand, and gasped at the sight before her. Where the Wilson house had once stood, there was now nothing but scorched earth. The structure had vanished entirely, leaving behind a gaping void, filled with swirling mist. In the center of the void floated the second sphere, glowing brighter than ever. Agent Lewis approached Laura, his expression grim. "It's a portal," he said simply. "We need to close it before it destabilizes further." "How do we do that?" Laura demanded, her voice tight with urgency. "We destroy the sphere," Lewis replied. "But we have to act fast. If it fully activates, there's no telling what might come through or where it could lead. Laura looked down at Ethan, whose face was pale with fear. What about his parents? She asked quietly. If we destroy the sphere, will we lose our chance to find them? Lewis hesitated, then shook his head. There's no guarantee they're even alive. But if we wait too long, we risk putting everyone in danger, including him. Laura clenched, her fists torn between duty and compassion. Finally, she knelt beside Ethan one last time. Ethan, I promise we'll do everything we can to bring your mom and dad back. But right now, we need to keep you and everyone else safe. Ethan didn't respond. He simply hugged his bear tighter, tears streaming down his cheeks. Tom. ARG team prepared to neutralize the sphere, using specialized weapons designed to disrupt its energy field. As they aimed their devices, the sphere pulsed wildly, emitting a deafening roar that echoed across the neighborhood. The swirling mist expanded, threatening to engulf everything in its path. Fire! Lewis commanded. A barrage of energy blasts struck the sphere simultaneously, causing it to shatter into countless fragments. The portal collapsed instantly, leaving behind only silence and darkness. When the dust settled, the street was eerily quiet. The evacuation zone remained empty, the houses dark and abandoned. Ethan sat on the curb, staring blankly at the spot where his home had once stood. Despite the danger being contained, the weight of loss hung heavily in the air. For Laura, the case was far from closed. Too many questions remained unanswered. Who, or what, had taken Daniel and Claire Wilson? What was the purpose of the spheres? And most importantly, could Ethan ever truly move on without knowing the fate of his parents? As dawn broke over Maplewood Avenue, Laura realized one thing for certain. Life in this quiet suburban neighborhood would never be the same again. Document. Part 4. The morning sun rose over Maplewood Avenue, casting a golden glow over the empty street. The events of the previous night felt like a strange dream, too surreal to believe. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Where the Wilson house had once stood, there was now nothing but scorched earth and silence. Neighbors who had been evacuated were slowly allowed to return, though many chose to stay away, their fear outweighing curiosity. For Ethan, the boy who had lost everything in such a short time, the new day brought no comfort. Detective Laura Hayes sat on the steps of her patrol car, sipping a cup of coffee as she watched Ethan play quietly with his stuffed bear near the curb. His small frame seemed even smaller against the backdrop of destruction. He hadn't spoken much since the sphere had been destroyed, and Laura couldn't blame him. The portal was gone, but so was any hope of finding answers about his parents. Or so it seemed. Agent Lewis and the ARG team had packed up their equipment and left shortly after sunrise, leaving behind only vague promises to keep investigating. Laura didn't trust them, not entirely. They were secretive, almost too eager to shut down the case without fully understanding what had happened. She knew they weren't telling her everything, but for now, she had no choice but to let them go. As she finished her coffee, Ryan Cole approached her, holding a clipboard. "We've got reports from some of the neighbors," he said, flipping through the pages. A few mentioned seeing strange lights in the sky last night, right around the time the house disappeared. "Strange lights?" Laura repeated, frowning. "What kind of lights?" Ryan shrugged. "Hard to say. Some described them as glowing orbs, others as streaks of blue light. One guy claimed he saw something hovering above the neighborhood before, vanishing into thin air." Laura's stomach tightened. This wasn't just a missing persons case anymore. It wasn't even about advanced technology or interdimensional travel. Something, or someone, was watching them. And whatever it was, it hadn't left yet. Later that afternoon, Laura decided to visit Dr. Alan Pierce at his lab. She needed answers, and if anyone could provide them, it was him. The physicist greeted her warmly when she arrived, leading her into a room filled with monitors and scientific equipment. On one screen, data streams scrolled endlessly, recording readings from the fragments of the destroyed sphere. "I've been analyzing the debris," Alan explained, pointing to a microscope slide containing a tiny shard of black material. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen." The molecular structure is, well, it's not natural. What do you mean, not natural? Laura asked, leaning closer. Alan adjusted his glasses and sighed. I mean, these materials shouldn't exist, at least not according to our current understanding of physics. Whoever created these spheres has access to technology we can barely comprehend. Faster than light travel, interdimensional portals, it's all theoretically possible, but humanity isn't close to achieving it. So you're saying this wasn't made by humans? Laura pressed. Alan hesitated before answering. I'm not ruling out human involvement entirely. Someone reverse-engineered this tech, someone like Daniel Wilson, but the original design? That came from somewhere else. Somewhere else? Laura echoed, feeling a chill run down her spine. You mean aliens? I didn't say that, Alan replied quickly, though his expression suggested otherwise. But think about it. What if Daniel stumbled upon something, some artifact, some signal that led him to build those spheres? What if he opened a door he shouldn't have? Laura stared at the shard under the microscope, her mind racing. If Alan was right, then Daniel Wilson hadn't just disappeared. He'd stepped through that door. And Claire, Ethan's mother, might have followed him willingly or not. But where had they gone? And why? Back at the station, Laura reviewed the case file, searching for clues she might have missed. Among the documents was a transcript of Ethan's earlier statements, along with sketches of the spheres drawn by forensic artists. As she flipped through the pages, one detail caught her attention. Ethan's mention of coordinates. He said, "His dad circled ads in the newspaper," Ryan reminded her when she brought it up. "Something about frequencies and adjustments." Laura nodded. "That's not random. Those notes were instructions, part of whatever process Daniel used to activate the spheres." She grabbed the newspaper they'd found in the Wilson house and spread it out on the desk. Sure enough, several classified ads were circled in red ink, each accompanied by handwritten annotations. Most of the notes referred to numbers and terms Laura didn't recognize, but one phrase stood out. Phase alignment required. "What does that mean?" Ryan asked, scratching his head. "I don't know," Laura admitted. "But it sounds technical, like part of a procedure." They spent hours poring over the notes, trying to piece together what Daniel might have been doing. Eventually, they realized the coordinates weren't geographic. They were astronomical. Each set corresponded to specific points in space mapped using star charts and celestial data. "This isn't just about leaving Earth," Laura said finally. "It's about traveling to another place entirely, another world." Ryan frowned. "So you're saying Daniel and Claire are out there? In space?" "Maybe," Laura replied. "Or maybe somewhere in between, somewhere we can't see or reach." Meanwhile, Ethan remained under protective custody, staying temporarily with a foster family until arrangements could be made for his long-term care. Despite the kindness of his temporary guardians, he seemed withdrawn, speaking only when necessary. Laura visited him often, bringing small gifts and spending time talking to him about anything but the events of the past few days. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Ethan suddenly spoke up. "Do you think Mommy and Daddy are happy?" Laura paused, unsure how to answer. She wanted to tell him yes, to give him some measure of peace, but she couldn't lie. Instead, she chose honesty tempered with compassion. "I don't know, Ethan, but I believe they loved you very much. Whatever they did, they probably thought it was the best thing for your family." Ethan nodded silently, hugging his bear tighter. After a moment, he added, "Daddy said the box would take us to a better place. Do you think they found it?" Laura smiled softly, though her heart ached. "I hope so, Ethan. I really do." As the days passed, life in Maplewood Avenue began to return to normal, or as close to normal as it could get. The evacuation zone was lifted, and neighbors resumed their routines, though whispers of the incident lingered. Reporters eventually moved on to other stories, and the media frenzy died down. For most people, the mystery of the Wilson house became just another urban legend. But for Laura, the case refused to fade. Every night she lay awake thinking about the spheres, the coordinates, and the possibility of worlds beyond their own. She couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over, that something bigger was still waiting to unfold. Her suspicions were confirmed one evening when she received an unexpected visitor. A man in a dark suit appeared at her doorstep, introducing himself as Agent Carter from the ARG. Unlike Agent Lewis, who had been cold and dismissive, Carter was calm and polite, almost unnervingly so. "Detective Hayes," he began, stepping inside at her invitation. "I understand you've been digging deeper into the Wilson case." Laura crossed her arms, narrowing her eyes. "And if I have?" Carter smiled faintly. "Let me be clear. We appreciate your dedication. But this matter goes far beyond local law enforcement. It involves national security and possibly global implications. So you're here to warn me off?" Laura challenged. "Not exactly," Carter replied, pulling a folder from his briefcase. "I'm here to offer you a chance to help us, from the inside." Laura opened the folder cautiously, revealing photographs of similar devices found in other parts of the country. Each bore the same smooth, featureless design as the spheres from the Wilson house. Beneath the images were notes detailing disappearances, sightings of strange lights, and accounts eerily similar to Ethan's story. "We believe these incidents are connected," Carter explained. "And we think Daniel Wilson may have been part of a larger network, people experimenting with alien technology." Laura's breath caught in her throat. "Alien technology?" Carter nodded gravely. "Yes, and if we don't act quickly, we risk losing control of it entirely." For a moment, Laura considered refusing. This was far beyond her expertise, far beyond anything she'd signed up for. But then she thought of Ethan, the boy who had lost everything and knew she couldn't turn away. "All right," she said finally. "I'll help, but only if it means finding answers. For Ethan, and for everyone else affected by this." Carter extended his hand, sealing the agreement. "Welcome aboard, Detective." As he left, Laura stared at the folder, her mind swirling with questions. The road ahead would be dangerous, filled with uncertainty and unknown threats. But for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could uncover the truth and bring Ethan's parents home. Document. Part 5. The days that followed Laura's agreement to join the ARG investigation were a blur of activity. She spent long hours in briefing rooms, poring over classified files and listening to experts discuss theories about alien technology, interdimensional travel, and the growing number of disappearances linked to devices like the spheres from the Wilson house. Each new piece of information only deepened the mystery, raising more questions than answers. Ethan remained at the forefront of Laura's thoughts. Though she visited him regularly, bringing updates on her efforts to find his parents, she couldn't shake the guilt of not having concrete answers. The boy seemed quieter with each passing day, retreating further into himself as if bracing for disappointment. His foster family tried their best to comfort him, but there was no replacing what he had lost or the hope of finding it again. Agent Carter became Laura's primary contact within the ARG. Unlike Agent Lewis, who had been abrupt and dismissive, Carter was patient and methodical, guiding Laura through the complexities of the case while respecting her role as a detective. Together they worked to connect the dots between the various incidents involving similar devices across the country. What emerged was a pattern, a network of individuals experimenting with advanced technology, often without fully understanding its dangers. One evening, after another grueling day of research, Carter called Laura into a secure conference room. On the table lay a map dotted with red markers, each representing a location where a sphere or related device had been discovered. Some sites were marked with notes indicating disappearances. Others noted strange phenomena like lights in the sky or unexplained energy surges. "We've identified a potential hotspot," Carter said, pointing to a cluster of markers near a remote area in the desert. "This region has seen multiple reports of unusual activity. We believe it may be tied to whoever or whatever is behind these devices." Laura studied the map closely. "You think Daniel and Claire Wilson might have gone there?" "It's possible," Carter admitted. If they used one of the spheres to leave Earth or enter another dimension, they may have ended up somewhere like this. It's isolated, making it an ideal testing ground. And what happens next? Laura asked, her voice tinged with both determination and apprehension. We send a team to investigate, Carter replied. But we need someone on the ground who understands the human side of this, someone who can look beyond the science and see the people involved. Laura nodded, knowing exactly what he meant. This wasn't just about solving a puzzle. It was about finding Ethan's parents and giving him closure. The journey to the desert took hours, winding through barren landscapes under a blazing sun. Laura traveled with a small ARG team, including Carter, 2 scientists, and several armed guards. They carried specialized equipment designed to detect tachyon emissions and other anomalies associated with the spheres. As they approached the designated site, Laura felt a mix of excitement and dread. What would they find? And would it bring them closer to the truth, or put them in greater danger? When they arrived, the scene was eerily quiet. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by jagged rock formations and patches of scrub brush. In the distance, a faint hum filled the air, growing louder as they moved closer to a shallow canyon. At its center stood a structure unlike anything Laura had ever seen, a sleek metallic dome partially buried in the sand, glowing faintly with a bluish hue. This isn't natural, one of the scientists whispered, awe evident in his voice. It's impossible. Carter signaled for the team to proceed cautiously. As they approached the dome, Laura noticed something etched into its surface, symbols that looked vaguely familiar yet completely alien. Beside her, Carter pulled out a tablet and began scanning the markings, cross-referencing them with data collected from the spheres. These are coordinates, he murmured, his eyes widening. They match the ones Daniel Wilson circled in the newspaper. Laura's heart raced. Could this be the place where the spheres had originated? And if so, did it hold the key to finding Daniel and Claire? Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, and the dome emitted a low-frequency pulse that resonated through their bodies. The ARG team froze, weapons raised as the entrance to the structure slid open with a hiss. Inside, the air was cool and dimly lit, revealing a labyrinth of corridors lined with glowing panels. Stay close, Carter ordered, leading the way inside. Laura followed, her senses on high alert. Every step felt like venturing deeper into the unknown, closer to answers, but also closer to danger. As they navigated the maze-like interior, they encountered chambers filled with strange artifacts, crystalline structures pulsating with light, holographic displays showing star maps, and machines humming with energy. It was clear this place was far beyond human engineering, an outpost of some kind, perhaps left behind by whoever had created the spheres. In one chamber, they found something that made Laura's breath catch in her throat. 2 figures lay motionless, on a platform encased in translucent pods filled with shimmering liquid. Through the glass, she recognized their faces immediately. Daniel and Claire, she whispered, her voice trembling. Carter examined the pods carefully, consulting with the scientists. They're alive, but barely. Their vitals are extremely low, almost suspended. Whatever this is, it's keeping them in stasis. How do we get them out? Laura demanded, stepping closer. It's risky, one of the scientists warned. We don't know how these systems work. If we disrupt them, we could harm the subjects or trigger a larger reaction. Laura clenched her fists, torn between urgency and caution. Finally, she turned to Carter. We didn't come all this way to walk away empty-handed. Figure it out. After tense minutes of analysis, the team managed to deactivate the pod safely. As the liquid drained away, Daniel and Claire stirred weakly, their eyes fluttering, open. They looked disoriented, confused, but alive. Where are we? Daniel croaked, struggling to sit up. You're safe, Laura assured him, helping him steady himself. We've been looking for you. Claire clutched her husband's hand, tears streaming down her face. Ethan, is he okay? He's waiting for you, Laura replied softly. But we need to get you home first. The journey back was bittersweet. While the rescue mission had succeeded, many questions remained unanswered. Who, or what, had built the dome? Why had Daniel and Claire been placed in stasis? And what role did the spheres play in all of this? Back in Maplewood Avenue, Ethan was reunited with his parents in an emotional scene that brought tears to everyone present. For the first time in weeks, he smiled, a genuine, joyful smile that lit up his face. Yet Laura knew the scars of the past wouldn't heal overnight. In the weeks that followed, the ARG continued its investigation, piecing together fragments of the mystery. The dome was sealed off, deemed too dangerous to explore further without proper safeguards. Daniel and Claire struggled to adjust to life after their ordeal, haunted by memories of the world, or worlds, they had glimpsed. For Laura, the experience changed her forever. She had faced forces beyond comprehension, confronted truths that defied logic, and fought to protect those caught in the crossfire. Though the case was officially closed, she couldn't help but wonder, was this truly the end? Or merely the beginning of something much larger? As she drove home one evening, the setting sun casting long shadows across the road, Laura glanced at the folder on her passenger seat, the same one Agent Carter had given her weeks ago. Its contents hinted at other mysteries, other cases waiting to be solved. Somewhere out there, the universe held secrets humanity wasn't ready to understand. But for now, Laura allowed herself a moment of peace. Ethan's family was whole again. That was enough. For today,